everyone. So today we're going to try the floating orange experiment. We're going to be testing whether or not this orange floats or sinks. My hypothesis is that it's going to float. I grew up in Southern California, so sometimes I would see oranges like floating in fountains or sources of water because citrus is pretty common in California. So my hypothesis is that it's gonna float. But let's just try dipping it in, see what happens. Okay, so it looks like it's floating. You can't really see my bowl very well, but it's floating in this water. My water is very cold, so I think that might have an effect on things, but we'll just see. So next, to determine whether it's floating or sinking in different parts, we're gonna cut it up. I have a knife right here and my cutting board to keep things clean. But let's just split it in half and see where that takes us. Okay, so we have two halves now. Let me dip it in, see what happens. Okay, so it looks like that half is floating. The peel side is down. Let's see what happens with this one. This is like a little more short, if that makes sense. Okay, so that one flipped upside down. Because this one is a little bit less than half, my assumption is that since it went inside down, is that maybe it has to do with the peel. But we'll see. We're gonna split it up a little bit more, see if that's the whole story. Okay, so now I have two smaller pieces, like something you would eat. Okay, so one flipped down and one is staying kind of inside up. Wow, I almost spilled my water there. That's kind of scary. But let's start peeling away at the different kinds of layers and see what's going on there. So first, let's try cutting away some of the inside part and seeing what that does. This is definitely a little scary to cut. Okay, so if I just put the inner part in, it looks like it completely floats. There's nothing in there any longer, nothing at the top. Let me see if I can get you guys to see that. Okay, you can kind of see it with my bowl right there. And let's try putting this peel in. I couldn't get all of it off, but let's see if that floats. Okay, so that one's floating. So that kind of tests our hypothesis a little bit more. Let's try to cut a little bit more of this inner part away, maybe to the edge of the really orange peel. Okay, so that's definitely a little thinner now. We got rid of some of that pith and all of the innards. Okay, so that's really floating. That's like the most it's been floating so far. It kind of rests directly on the top of the water rather than floating a little bit down. So we can see that this portion, this orangey portion on the top, is gonna be maybe the thing that creates the most buoyancy in our orange. So with our cold water is a little more dense. So that might be why this orange piece is floating a little bit more than it would in maybe a warm water source. But I think we can come to a firm consensus or hypothesis that this orangey peel part is the one that is causing the orange to float. We could maybe hypothesize that it's the amount of air within the peel. Leaves a lot of space for air to cycle through. Whereas with this portion, we see a lot of water within it, which creates a higher density situation. And since it's a hard compressed amount of water, it would sink below the water that's in the bowl. But yeah. Woohoo.